we're back with some more Xbox, Activision, Blizzard versus Sony, who's trying to stop the deal. And we have some articles here talking about Bobby Kotick, what's going to happen if the deal falls through, the confidence that Microsoft and Activision have, and some other things here that is pretty insightful as to what is going to happen with the CMA and how much power they actually wield for whether this deal passes or not, as well as some interesting, actually kind of funny stuff with the subpoena that Microsoft has issued to Sony. As we know, Sony is giving them a hard time. But first of all, we have this here from Yahoo Finance, and they're talking about the deal, and there's some sources that have told Fox Business, who apparently are close to the deal, have said that if the acquisition does not go through, Bobby Kotick will be staying on at Activision, saying he will absolutely remain at the gaming giant to run the company. So that's one thing that a lot of people, once they announced this acquisition, once Xbox, Microsoft announced that they were acquiring Activision Blizzard, people were excited that Bobby Kotick was going to be out and that the management team at Activision Blizzard was going to be replaced because of the scandals and all of the terrible stuff that happened at Activision Blizzard, that we know, all the documents that came out. So that's something that I think for the gaming industry and for the people working at Activision, they do not want to see. But if Sony is able to block this deal, Bobby Kotick seemingly is going to be staying on at Activision. Now, they go down here and they say that these sources also told Fox Business that the CMA, I guess, to Activision and to Microsoft for this deal to go through is really the only regulatory body that matters. Because at the end of the day, the FTC, yes, they've sued Xbox and Microsoft, but they're going to go to court. And if we look at all of the facts that have come out, that we've seen public on social media and from the documents that have been shared to the public, there's pretty much no way that if you look at those facts that you can rule against Microsoft in this deal. So a lot of people are assuming that if this goes to court, there's no chance that Microsoft is going to lose. And that's a big thing here, which is why it makes the CMA so important. Because if we go down here, there is a big piece of information that shows why the CMA is so important, and it is that unlike the FTC, once the CMA makes their decision, there is no legal recourse. That's the decision. It says here, sources told Fox Business the reason the CMA is the only real potential roadblock among regulatory bodies is that once the UK regulator makes a decision, unlike the US Federal Trade Commission, it offers companies no legal recourse such as a trial. But Microsoft and Activision would win any US litigation merely on the facts. And this is an analyst saying this in terms of the fact that they think that they would win, I believe, or was the sources that say that. So either way, it doesn't really matter who said it. The fact is that the CMA is so important for this deal to go through, because if they block it, and that's it. I don't think there's anything Microsoft is going to be able to do based off of what is said there, which is why the next couple of weeks are probably the most important weeks for this entire thing. It's the time that Microsoft and Activision put their case together to present to the CMA with their provisional findings and say, hey, this is how we are going to satisfy your remedies. This is why we think that your provisional findings are wrong and that this isn't going to hurt competition. Because we know the biggest thing here that they've talked about is how is this going to affect consoles? How is this going to affect the cloud? And it's going to give Xbox an unfair advantage. And one of the things here, it says, we provisionally found that this would substantially reduce competition in gaming consoles to the detriment of gamers, Xbox and PlayStation gamers alike, which could result in higher prices, reduced range, lower quality, worse service, and or reduced innovation, which I think for a lot of people who have been following this, it just doesn't really make any sense, because all of these things that they have said isn't something that we've seen happen previously from the other acquisitions that Xbox has made. They haven't lowered the quality of these games. They definitely haven't reduced the range of the games and the amount of people that can reach. In fact, they've increased the range, and Call of Duty will have an increased range. I mean, right now you can play it pretty much anywhere, but it's going to have an increased range in the sense that it's going to be 100% equal everywhere that you decide to play it, whether that's on your phone, through the cloud, through a console, wherever you access this game, it is going to be 100% equal. And right now, that equal access isn't there because there are those marketing rights with PlayStation where they give you exclusive content for Call of Duty. And Rima Alayli commented on this, not sure if I said the name right, but Rima is Microsoft's corporate vice president and deputy general counsel. And they told Eurogamer, what does 100% mean? And they're talking about 100% equal access to the game. What does 100% mean? When we say equal, we mean equal. 10 years of parity on content, on pricing, on features, on quality, on playability. And that alone to me is already putting Call of Duty in a better situation, already putting gamers in a better situation for this deal. We want it to go through at the end of the day. If you're a gamer, if you care about this type of stuff, if you don't care about the console wars, if you don't care about where you play the game, but just that people everywhere get to access this game and get equal content no matter what device that they're on, this deal will help that. Because right now that isn't the case, with PlayStation gamers getting exclusive content based off of the deal that Sony and PlayStation have made with Activision Blizzard. And that's the irony of all of this, is that the stuff that the CMA is arguing is stuff that Sony is literally doing. So they obviously just don't know that, I would assume, or they know that and they're just being ignorant to the fact that that is currently happening. Even with the latest Call of Duty release, there's exclusive features and content there. Now, one of the ways that Microsoft is going to be able to present their case to the CMA and present their case to the FTC going forward is to be able to use data that PlayStation has provided them. And we know that with the FTC, they have subpoenaed PlayStation. PlayStation is not cooperating whatsoever, or Sony is not cooperating whatsoever in providing those documents. And now, with the latest extension that apparently Sony had applied for and it was denied because Microsoft said that we're not going to grant this extension anymore, they had to provide their reasoning. And now we have some information on their reasoning, and some of the things that they are saying is pretty funny and interesting as well. So first of all, they're looking for those papers, and they say Jim Ryan is traveling all across the globe and speaking out against Activision's merger while Microsoft attempts to gather evidence to defend the FTC claims. And so right now, Microsoft has to create their case. They have to come up with the reasoning why this deal is not going to adversely affect consumers and market competition. And they published some files on February 7th, which was their filing to try and stop Sony from getting that extension for the subpoena to be able to provide their documents. And they say here, according to the filing published on February 7th, Microsoft has been trying to work with Sony on acquisition of documents and records. The process has not been smooth. Microsoft accuses Sony of essentially resisting as much as it is allowed to by law. So Sony's doing everything they can in their power not to provide these documents because they know that these documents are going to give so much ammunition to Microsoft for their case and will probably make Sony look really dumb from some of the things they've probably gone out and said to these regulatory bodies. It continues here and says Microsoft is trying to get records from Sony's custodians, who are typically executives with access to Sony's books, but Microsoft is having difficult times acquiring specific info about Sony Interactive Entertainment's business. So these custodians, high up executives that they work with in order to get the access to these books and to these documents that they are looking for, and the key Sony Interactive Entertainment executives that were going to serve as custodians to pass along this information was initially PlayStation CFO Lin Tao, who Sony had initially proposed to be included as a custodian, but then they changed their mind, and then it moved to Hideaki Nishino, who is the Senior VP of Global Product Strategy and Management. And Microsoft claims this: SIE is unwilling to include a single custodian with oversight of or direct involvement in key aspects of SIE's business that are highly relevant to this action, SIE's financial planning and strategy, and SIE's hardware strategy and development. And you would think the most relevant custodian that should be doing this would be Jim Ryan. I mean, he is the head there. He knows everything going on with SIE, controls it, he runs it. So they are putting somebody in place that won't have as much knowledge and as much information as Jim Ryan. As Jim Ryan goes around the world trying to do everything he can to talk to regulators to try and block this deal. Pretty comical, if you ask me. And they say here, Microsoft's counsel notes that Nishino's information in particular could be used to determine whether SIE has tools in its arsenal to compensate for the hypothetical loss of Activision content. And I think from a gamer's perspective, from a layman's perspective, you take out all the Activision Blizzard content. Call of Duty is their biggest thing, of course. I mean, they were in 2020 Activision Blizzard's biggest customer, and every single year it's the top selling game, Call of Duty is. And so Sony has marketing rights, so they're just making a ton of money off of Call of Duty from people playing it on PlayStation Network, doing microtransactions and buying the game digitally, getting those cuts and stuff. So it's a huge game for them. But you take that away, will these documents be able to show that taking that away, Sony will be able to survive? And from a gamer's layman's perspective, I think absolutely Sony's going to be able to survive. And I think obviously Microsoft knows this, and it's going to be really easy to show if they're able to get their hands on these documents. And finally, in terms of, again, of Jim Ryan traveling around the world, this is actually exactly what Microsoft says in the document. They say, to Microsoft Counsel's knowledge, SIE has not completed collections for a single custodian, not even for individuals like SIE President and CEO Jim Ryan, who has traveled the world speaking out against the Microsoft Activision deal and whose role as a custodian has never been in dispute. So there you have it. It's just business, I guess, at the end of the day that they're doing, but it's really showing that Sony, PlayStation, they know that they need to utilize everything within the law to delay, and hopefully not have to provide these documents so that the regulators rule on the decision before these documents are provided. That's something that can happen, or at least when these documents are provided, it will be too late. These regulators will have already made their mind up. So I think that's what their plan is, because right now with the CMA, they've already come up with their provisional findings, and Microsoft has to rebuttal these provisional findings and try to prove to them, hey, we can meet these remedies and we don't have to sell Call of Duty. And here is why Sony, why PlayStation will be able to survive and thrive in cloud gaming, in the console market, even if this deal goes through. And then here on the FTC, I mean, these documents are going to be very crucial in order to argue their case when or if they have to go to court. So we'll see what happens. I think the next couple weeks are going to be really interesting, very crucial for the outcome of the Activision Blizzard acquisition. But that's it for me, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this. And what do you think about all this stuff with Jim Ryan traveling the world and Bobby Kotick staying on if the deal doesn't go through? Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for your support. And I'll catch you in the next video.